Life is full of challenges, and no one is exempt from facing difficulties. At times it may seem as though struggles are unfair, unnecessary, or even meaningless. However, challenges have a purpose, even when we do not immediately understand them. Every obstacle we encounter is an opportunity for growth, transformation, and preparation for something greater. Instead of viewing hardships as punishments or misfortunes, we should see them as part of God's divine plan to shape us into stronger, wiser, and more faithful individuals. Difficulties often serve as a test of faith. When everything is going well, it is easy to trust in God and remain positive. But when trials come, our true faith is revealed. These moments test our patience, endurance, and belief in God's promises. James 1:02 reminds us, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." Challenges refine our character and strengthen our trust in God. Without them, we would never develop the endurance needed to handle bigger responsibilities and greater blessings. Many times, challenges are a form of preparation. Before we can step into the next level of success, we must first go through a season of refining. Just as gold must go through fire to be purified, we must go through difficulties to be strengthened. Every great person in history, whether in the Bible or in real life, has faced adversity before reaching their purpose. David had to fight Goliath and endure years of hardship before becoming king. Joseph had to go through betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment before rising to power in Egypt. These experiences were not meant to destroy them, but to prepare them for their destiny. Hardships also teach us valuable life lessons. When we experience struggles, we gain wisdom, resilience, and a deeper understanding of ourselves and others. Challenges teach us humility, patience, and the importance of perseverance. They help us develop empathy for others who are going through similar struggles. Many times our own trials become the source of inspiration and encouragement for others. The lessons we learn through our challenges equip us to guide and support those who are facing similar situations. Another important purpose of challenges is that they draw us closer to God. When life is easy, we may not feel the need to pray or seek His guidance, but when we face difficulties, we are reminded of how much we need Him. These moments push us to strengthen our relationship with God and rely on His wisdom and power. Psalm 34:17-18 says, "The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Challenges remind us that we are not alone and that God is always there to support and guide us. It is also important to understand that setbacks often lead to something better. Sometimes when a door closes, it is because God is redirecting us towards something greater. What may seem like a loss in the moment could actually be a blessing in disguise. Many successful people have faced failure before achieving greatness. Instead of giving up, they use their failures as stepping stones to success. This is a reminder that difficulties are not the end of the journey, but rather a part of the process leading to something greater. No matter what challenges we face, we must remember that they are not meant to break us, but to build us. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" we should ask, "What can I learn from this?" Every difficulty comes with a lesson, a blessing, and an opportunity for growth. When we embrace our challenges with faith and perseverance, we will come out stronger, wiser, and better prepared for the future. God has a purpose for every struggle, and if we trust Him, He will use our challenges to shape us into the people He created us to be. Fear is one of the greatest obstacles in life. It holds people back, creates doubt, and keeps them from stepping into their true potential. Fear whispers that failure is inevitable, that things will never improve, and that we are not strong enough to face challenges. However, faith is the key that allows us to overcome fear and walk in confidence. When we choose faith over fear, we shift our focus from our problems to God's power, from uncertainty to trust, and from worry to peace. Faith and fear cannot exist together. Fear comes when we rely on our own strength, but faith grows when we trust in God's plan. The Bible reminds us in 2 Timothy 1:7, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." This means that fear does not come from God. It is an attack that tries to weaken us. God has given us the strength to overcome anything we face, but we must believe in Him rather than allowing fear to control us. One of the most powerful examples of choosing faith over fear is the story of David and Goliath. When the Israelites saw Goliath, they were filled with fear. He was a giant, a warrior, and stronger than any of them. But David, a young shepherd, did not let fear stop him. Instead, he chose faith. He believed that God was bigger than Goliath and that He would give him victory. With just a sling and a stone, David defeated the giant. This story teaches us that when we trust in God, no challenge is too big and no fear is too strong. Fear often comes from focusing on what could go wrong. It makes us imagine the worst possible outcomes and fills our minds with anxiety. But faith teaches us to trust in the goodness of God. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." This verse reminds us that we are never alone. No matter what we face, God is always with us, guiding and protecting us. One reason people struggle with fear is because they want to control everything. They worry about the future, about things they cannot change, and about what others think. But faith means surrendering control to God and trusting that He has a plan. When we try to do everything on our own, we become exhausted. But when we trust God, we find peace. Matthew 6:34 reminds us, "Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself." This means that we should focus on today and trust that God will take care of the future. Fear can also stop people from pursuing their dreams. Many people never start a new job, follow a passion, or take a leap of faith because they are afraid of failing. But faith pushes us forward. It gives us the confidence to believe that if God has placed a dream in our hearts, He will make a way for it to come true. Even when things do not go as planned, faith reminds us that God's timing is perfect and that every challenge is a step towards something greater. Faith over fear does not mean that we will never feel afraid. It means that when fear comes, we do not let it control us. We choose to trust in God instead of giving in to doubt. We choose to move forward even when we do not see the whole picture. We choose to believe that God is bigger than any problem we face. No matter what situation you are in today, remember that faith is stronger than fear. Hold on to God's promises, trust in His plan, and know that He will always lead you to victory. Life is full of ups and downs, and there are times when we face situations that feel impossible to overcome. We may struggle with personal challenges, financial hardships, emotional pain, or uncertainty about the future. In such moments, our natural reaction is often to panic, worry, or try to take control of everything. However, the real power lies in being still and trusting in God. When we learn to surrender our fears and anxieties to Him, we allow Him to work in ways beyond our understanding. Being still does not mean doing nothing. It means quieting our hearts, silencing our doubts, and placing our trust in God's perfect timing. It is an act of faith, choosing to believe that God is working behind the scenes even when we cannot see the outcome. The Bible reminds us in Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." This verse is not just a suggestion, it is a powerful instruction. God is reminding us to stop striving, to let go of control, and to rest in His promises. One of the biggest reasons people struggle with trusting God is fear. Fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of the unknown. It all makes us anxious and restless. When we are afraid, we tend to rely on our own understanding and strength instead of leaning on God. But Proverbs 3:5 and 6 teaches us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight." This means that even when we don't see a solution, We should trust that God is already making a way. The story of Moses and the Israelites at the Red Sea is a perfect example of what it means to be still and trust in God. When the Israelites were trapped between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army, they were filled with fear. They thought they were doomed. But Moses told them in Exodus 14:14, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Instead of panicking, they obeyed God's command, and He miraculously parted the sea for them. This story teaches us that when we trust God and remain still in faith, He will fight our battles. Another example is the story of Jesus calming the storm. When Jesus and His disciples were in a boat, a great storm arose and the disciples were terrified, but Jesus was sleeping peacefully. When they woke Him, He simply said, "Peace, be still," and the storm stopped instantly. This story reminds us that no matter how big the storm in our life is, Jesus has the power to bring peace. We just need to have faith and trust in Him. Waiting on God requires patience. In today's fast-paced world, we are used to instant solutions. We want answers immediately, and when things don't happen in our timing, we become frustrated. But God's timing is always perfect. Sometimes He delays certain things because He is preparing something even better for us. Isaiah 40:31 says, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles." This means that when we wait on God with faith, He will give us strength to endure and bless us at the right time. Trusting God doesn't mean we will never face difficulties, but it does mean we will never face them alone. When we choose to be still and trust in Him, we experience His peace, even in the midst of trials. Instead of worrying, we should pray and surrender our burdens to Him, knowing that He loves us and will take care of us. No matter what situation you are facing, remember that God is in control. Be still, trust Him, and watch Him turn things around in ways you never imagined. Life often presents us with situations where we feel lost, confused, or uncertain about the future. There are moments when nothing seems to be going right, and it feels as if God is silent. We pray for breakthroughs, but nothing changes. We hope for answers, but all we see are closed doors. In such moments, we might wonder if God is even listening. However, the truth is that God is always working behind the scenes, orchestrating things in ways we cannot see. Even when we do not understand what is happening, He is preparing something greater for us. God's ways are higher than our ways. As humans, we have limited vision. We only see what is in front of us. But God sees the whole picture. Just like a master weaver creating a beautiful tapestry, He is carefully arranging every thread of our lives, even if we do not yet see the final design. Isaiah 55:8-9 reminds us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This means that what may seem like a delay, disappointment, or even a failure to us might actually be a setup for something better. The story of Joseph in the Bible is a powerful example of how God works behind the scenes. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused and thrown into prison. For years, it seemed as though his life was full of unfair suffering, but in reality, God was positioning him for something extraordinary. Through a series of events that only God could have arranged, Joseph became the second most powerful man in Egypt and was able to save countless lives, including his own family, during a famine. Looking back, we can see that every hardship he faced was a step toward his destiny. What others meant for evil, God used for good. This story teaches us that even in our darkest moments, God is at work, setting things in motion for our ultimate blessing. Another example is the story of Esther. She was just an ordinary Jewish girl, yet she became the queen of Persia at a critical time when her people were in danger. At first, it seemed like she was just placed in the palace by chance, but later it became clear that God had positioned her there for a reason, to save her people from destruction. Her story reminds us that sometimes we may not understand why we are in certain situations, but God has a divine purpose behind it all. One of the biggest challenges in trusting that God is working behind the scenes is having patience. We live in a world where we expect instant results, but God's timing is different from ours. Sometimes He allows us to go through seasons of waiting because He is preparing us for something greater. During these times, it is important to keep our faith strong and trust that even if we do not see immediate changes, He is still working. Romans 8:28 gives us a beautiful promise. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. This means that every situation, no matter how difficult, will ultimately serve a greater purpose in God's plan. There are times when we look back on our lives and realize that things worked out in ways we never expected. What seemed like rejection was actually protection. What seemed like a loss was actually a redirection. God closes doors not to harm us, but to lead us towards something better. When we trust in His process, we find peace, even in uncertainty. No matter what you are facing today, remember that God is working behind the scenes. Even if you cannot see it, He is moving, aligning things in your favor, and preparing blessings beyond your imagination. Keep trusting, keep believing, and in His perfect timing, everything will fall into place. Life is unpredictable, and at times it feels like everything is falling apart. We face disappointments, failures, and struggles that seem impossible to overcome. In these moments, it is easy to feel hopeless and believe that things will never change. However, no situation is beyond God's power. He can turn any situation around, no matter how difficult, impossible, or hopeless it may seem. His power to restore, heal, and transform lives is limitless. Throughout the Bible, we see countless examples of God turning situations around. One of the most powerful stories is that of Joseph. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. For years, it seemed like everything in his life was going wrong. But God had a plan. He took Joseph from the prison to the palace, making him the second most powerful man in Egypt. Through Joseph, God saved an entire nation from famine. What others meant for harm, God used for good. This story reminds us that even when life seems unfair, God is working behind the scenes. He can take the worst situations and turn them into something beautiful. Another example is the story of Job. He was a man who lost everything, his wealth, his health, and even his children. Yet in the midst of his suffering, he remained faithful to God. In the end, God restored everything Job had lost, giving him even more than before. This story shows us that no matter how much we lose, God is able to restore and bless us beyond what we can imagine. Difficult seasons do not last forever, and God's restoration is always greater than our losses. One of the greatest demonstrations of God turning a situation around is seen in the life of Jesus. When Jesus was crucified, it seemed like all hope was lost. His followers were heartbroken, believing that everything was over. But 3 days later, He rose from the dead, proving that God has the power to bring life out of death. What seemed like the darkest moment in history became the greatest victory for all humanity. This reminds us that even when we face the darkest times, God's power can bring new beginnings and unexpected miracles. Sometimes we may feel stuck in situations that seem unchangeable. We may struggle with financial problems, broken relationships, sickness, or failures. But no matter how impossible things look, God is not limited by circumstances. Jeremiah 32:27 says, "I am the Lord, the God of all mankind. Is anything too hard for me?" The answer is no. Nothing is too hard for God. When we trust in Him, we allow Him to work in ways beyond our understanding. Faith plays a crucial role in seeing God's power in our lives. When we focus on our problems, we may feel overwhelmed. But when we focus on God, we open the door for miracles. Romans 8:28 reminds us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." This means that no matter what we go through, God can use it for our benefit. Even our failures and mistakes can be turned into testimonies of His grace. If you are facing a tough situation today, do not lose hope. Remember that God is in control and He can turn things around in ways you never expected. What seems like an end could be the beginning of something greater. Keep trusting, keep praying, and keep believing. God specializes in turning the impossible into possible, and in His perfect timing, He will bring restoration, breakthroughs, and blessings beyond your imagination. Life often takes unexpected turns, and there are moments when we feel like giving up. Pain, failure, loss, and disappointment can make it seem as if our story is coming to an end. But no matter what we have been through, no matter how many mistakes we have made, and no matter how hopeless things may appear, our story is not over yet. As long as we have breath, God is still writing our journey, and He has greater plans ahead. Many times we judge our future based on our past. If we have failed, we assume that success is impossible. If we have been hurt, we believe that healing will never come. But God is not finished with us. Jeremiah 29:11 reminds us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." This means that even when we cannot see what is ahead, God already has a purpose and a beautiful future waiting for us. The Bible is filled with stories of people who faced great challenges, but saw their lives completely transformed because God was not finished with them. Take Moses, for example. He made mistakes, ran away in fear, and spent years in the wilderness. Yet God called him back and used him to lead the Israelites out of slavery. If Moses had believed his story was over, he would have never fulfilled his destiny. This teaches us that no matter how many setbacks we face, God can still use us for great things. Another powerful example is Peter. He was one of Jesus' closest disciples, but when Jesus was arrested, Peter denied Him 3 times out of fear. He must have felt like a complete failure, thinking he had ruined everything. But Jesus restored him, giving him a new purpose. Peter later became a bold leader in the early church, proving that failure is not the end of our story. Just because we have fallen does not mean we cannot rise again. Sometimes we go through seasons of pain and loss that make us feel like nothing good can come out of our lives. We may lose loved ones, face unexpected challenges, or struggle with personal battles. But even in these moments, our story is not over. Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him." This means that even our worst experiences can be used for something beautiful. God can take our broken pieces and turn them into a masterpiece. One of the most important things to remember is that we should not let temporary struggles define our entire journey. Just because we are going through a difficult chapter does not mean the whole book is bad. Every great story has moments of struggle, but those struggles lead to triumph. The key is to keep going, keep believing, and keep trusting that God is still working behind the scenes. If you feel lost or discouraged today, remind yourself that this is not the end. God has more in store for you. Your past does not define your future. Your failures do not define your worth, and your struggles do not determine your destiny. As long as you keep moving forward, trusting in God's plan, you will see Him do incredible things in your life. No matter what has happened, your story isn't over yet. There are still new opportunities, new blessings, and new beginnings ahead. Keep your faith strong, hold on to hope, and remember that the best is yet to come. God is still writing your story, and He always finishes what He starts.